Okay, sorry about that, guys, but we had a little technical difficulties and a painter in the base measure, so we had to relocate to the conference room. Everyone can hear? Somebody nod your head. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Those in the room can hear as well. That is fabulous. All right, I am going to here source sheets. Give me a second. I'm gonna now let me just put the source sheet on the chat, and then we'll start. All right, I'm gonna close it. I will figure this out. Okay, now chat. Okay, we're getting there. File. My computer. All right. Give me 30 seconds and out the cache. Okay, in your chat box, you have a source sheet. I think we are ready to go. Let me just explain the title first. Does God care about your cash? So there is a concept in the Gemara that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, we'll see the Gemara in a moment, is chasa al mamonan shel Yisrael, is considerate and cares about our money and wants to save Jews' money. Right? That's the concept in the Gemara. We'll tonight try and source it and figure out what it means, and at the end, I have a fabulous surprise application of this principle to contemporary Lakewood Kollel life. Although I shouldn't say that because in Lakewood, many people work. Maybe Meir Sharm is a better example. Let me just say from the outset, there is a second conflicting principle, which is ein anius b'makom ashirus. There is no poverty when we're talking about wealth. And that's a weird concept, but what it means there is, we're not worried about spending money. You want gold for the Beis HaMikdash, knock yourself out. Right? But it's too complicated I want to just start with our principle, forget the other principle, in a different time. And sheer number 2 would be contrasting and comparing the principles, but we're going to leave that aside for now. Let's start. Let's go to the Gemara, see where it comes from, and we'll move from there. So this is the Gemara Rosh Hashanah Chav Zayin Amud Aleph. Next week we will talk about blowing shofar in a pit or a cistern, right, ramifications and whatnot. That's on Chav Zayin Amud Beis. But here's the Gemara, the first source on the page. It says, "Vitanios on fast days b'shel scharim gefufim." Right, we blow a shofar of a male bent horn. Upiv mitzupa kesef. The mouth, but not the mouth you blow, but like probably a rim close to the mouth, is overlaid with silver. All right, now, what's the other option? Right, on Rosh Hashanah they used gold. What's the price differential between silver and gold? A lot. Right now, well, certainly, probably always, certainly nowadays, right? Silver is cheaper, gold is much more expensive. So the Gemara wants to know, Ma'ishna hasam dezav, right? Why on Rosh Hashanah do we use gold? Ma'ishna hacha de kesef, and on fast days we're using silver, right? Meaning either give me gold or give me silver. What's the difference? And the answer is as follows: Ibayis ema kol kinufya de kasefu. Right? Maybe one could say that all gatherings are silver. And this is from last week's parsha. You should make 2 trumpets, right? That's from the marching instructions with the trumpets and the war instructions with the trumpet. And those are silver. And part of the purpose of the trumpet was to gather the people together in order to move. Right? One was to call out times of war. The other is marching instructions come by trumpet. So when we gather people together, what happens on a fast day? We gather people together. Everyone comes together. They daven. They get to the public square. They would all daven because they really very desperately needed rain. So maybe the Torah has a precedent, and that's why we use silver in these types of situations. And if that's true, it is what it is. The Ibayis Ema, possibly, HaTorah chasa al mamonan shel Yisrael. Right? The HaKadosh Baruch Hu is considerate, right, about Jewish money. God does indeed care about our cash. Yes.
It says HaTorah.
Say it again.
It says HaTorah. And you're translating it as Hashem.
Yes.
There should be some, that's not always the case, and
How is that not? So let me just repeat the question for the people on the Zoom, and then
it
we'll
doesn't
go
make
through it.
sense to the question. No,
Oh, it
it
does.
does.
But let's work. I want to work through the question. What Mark is making Mark Burley, just for those who can't see because my camera's pointing towards me. Sorry, I listen. I identify everybody here. Okay, so Mark makes a good point where it doesn't say Hashem is considerate. It says the Torah. So I'll pose it then as a question. Is there a distinction between Hashem caring and the Torah caring?
Obviously, my answer is obvious.
Your answer is obviously fascinating. My answer is obviously not. Why is your answer obviously?
I don't want to get into it, but just.
No, get into it. This is
Hashem wrote the Torah, I get all that, but we live by the Torah, everything by the Torah, but Hashem's an entity. I mean, in and of, I don't want to be sarcastic, but like, he's Hashem. I mean, the Torah is one part of it, an important part of it, and we never, how often did this come up where you would translate HaTorah as Hashem?
so that's a fair point. Meaning, I would let me rephrase Mark's question. Right, Mark says, no, it is intelligent. It's a good. I think it's a good point. I mean, it catches something which is interesting. Right, what Mark said is that Hashem is all encompassing. The Torah is one part. Right, my kind of vantage point was, well, if it's in the Torah, so God said it. So I think I would reformulate the question, and that is, why does the Gemara specifically use the terminology HaTorah Chasa as opposed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chasa? So that's a fair question. Right, now, what would be the answer to that question?
The source.
Thank you. Right, that's the source is the Torah. Where is the source, the Torah? So look at Rashi, right? Look at source number 2. And this is the fascinating. Then we'll see the Mishnah in Negoy.
Tell me I should read ahead. You don't.
Rashi says as follows. Dichsiv, it says, this is again, Vayikra Yudalit is Parshas, I think it's the second, it's this probably end of Tazria, or the beginning of Mitzorah. I never remember, but it's in the Tzaras Parsha. Vitziva HaKohen, Upinu et Habayit, right? That when you have Tzaras on the house, the Kohen commands you to clear the house before that the earthenware vessels inside the house should not become impure or tameh. She'ein lahem tahara b'mikvah, right? Earthenware vessels cannot become pure. You can't just throw them in a mikvah and purify them as you can for other vessels. Let me add to that, anything that's in the house when it is declared a tzaras house becomes tameh with tumas tzaras, becomes tameh. And if an earthenware vessel is in the house, it's gone. So what did the Torah say? Oops, sorry about that. Let me just silence my phone. The Torah is telling us that the Kohen would say, guys, clear the house first, get everything out, and then we'll declare the house tameh. Right?
They were in the house when the tzara'at appeared. The vessels were in the house.
Yes, but
if you take them out before it's declared tzara'at, then it's okay.
1000%. Because what is the deciding factor? It's the declaration of tzaras. Right? We have the same thing with, right? We've been talking about this in the Gemara also, Kiddush HaChodesh, right? The sanctification of the new moon. You could see it clear as day, and until Beis Din says Mekudash, Warnished. right? So it is the Kohen's announcement or pronouncement of tzaras that renders you a spiritual leper. Yes.
Would the Kohen always advise to take it out first, or would you just naturally do that before you get the Kohen there?
So Steve wants to know, would you just do it in case? Or does, right,
Or does the Kohen warning mean it's going to happen?
so that's a good one. Does the Kohen, probably if the Kohen says, get your stuff out, it's probably going to happen. He probably really thinks it is tzaras. It's kind of like when I was a kid in shul, whenever Hatzalah announced, Kohanim, please leave the shul. As an 8-year-old kid, you knew it was bad, right? Because they thought the guy that went down might not make it. Kohanim, get out of the shul. I never heard that.
No.
No, thank God. I heard that more than once as a child in shul. I don't know what that says about the shul, but
We didn't have Hatzalah, maybe that's why we didn't hear it.
well, I don't think the EMT was going to do it. No, we had Hatzalah would say, Kohanim, get out, because they thought
Was it an older shul?
we had some old people.
Yeah.
It wasn't such an old shul, but I don't know. Maybe that was just part of the
So
course.
bad that you're calling us.
Yeah.
But it was
If
kind.
your
It
house
was.
looks so
It was
shady
kind of
that you're
shocking.
calling the
So
Kohen.
let's look then at the Mishnah and the Gaim, who really spells this out. And that will be kind of our source for, and then we're going to try and figure out what the sources tell us about this rule. Again, that's really the challenge. All right, so this is the Mishnah in the Gaim, chapter 12, verse Mishnah 5. Right, Ketzad Re'iyat Habayit. How does the Kohen's come in and investigate the house for tzaras? Uba Shelo Habayit V'Yigid LaKohen, right, Lemor. Right, the person who owns the house, the homeowner, comes to the Kohen and says, Kanega Nirali Babayit. Right, this is what I saw in my house. Right, this goes to Eve's point. Afilu Talmid Chacham Yodea Shu Nega Vadai. Even if the guy's a Talmid Chacham, he knows for sure this is done. It's it. This is tzaras. We're finished. He knows it. He's clear as day. Lo Yigzar V'Yomar Nega Nirali Babayit Ela Kin Nega Nirali Babayit. Right, he has to say it looks like tzaras. Not that I have tzaras. It looks like it, so that we're not saying it with certainty. V'tziva Kohenu Pinu Atabayit, and the Kohen says, clear the house. Right, we skip parentheses, so jump to the next line. Afilu chavile eitzim va'afilu chavile kanim. Right, even and this is bundles of wood and reeds. Right, everything has to go. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Those are the words of Rabbi Yehuda in English. You're two lines up from the bottom in the English. Right, Rav Shimon says Asek hu le panui, that clearing things keeps them occupied. We'll leave that for a different time. Amar Rabbi Meir b'chimalo mitamelo. Right, mitamelo im tomar klei etzav v'begadav. Right, matbilin v'hein tahorin. Right, meaning all those things, the clothing, they can all be immersed in a mikvah and made pure. Alma chasa Torah. Right, what did the Torah have concern for? Al klicher, so your earthenware vessels, v'al pacho. Right, a pacho is a small little jug. Right, v'al tapav. Right, it's these tiny little things. Imka chasa Torah al mamonu habazui. Right, the Torah cares so much about, right, the negligible items, the nothings. Kal v'chomer al mamonu achaviv. How much more so on, right, real money, right, on the real on the investment account. Yeah, imkach al mamonu kal v'chomer al nefesh banav v'nosav. Hashem cares so much about our money. How much more so about our children? And if Hashem cares so much about somebody who got tzaras ostensibly because they sinned, how much more so on somebody who is a tzaddik? Now I'll put the question to you. So that's the Mishnah. Clearly, the piece that is the most important in terms of the meaning of the rule is the end. What does the end of that Mishnah tell you about the rule? Why does Hashem care about our money? Right.
You follow his law.
But here it's not even, right? It's even the sinner. Right? It's a fact, right? Even the sinner, how much more so we who do not? We hope. We do not, right? We hope we don't. We certainly try. Not always succeed, but we certainly try. So hold that thought just for a moment, because there is another source. Right? If you turn the page, there is a second source, and then we'll try and figure out what's the difference between those two sources, maybe two different approaches to this rule. What does Hashem really care about? And then, as I promised, on the next page, a different direction with the rule, a different usage of the rule. So this is a Gemara in Menachos. Ayin Vav Amud Beis is 76b. We're talking about flour for the offering, and here the Gemara says as follows: Tana Rabbanan, right? Solet ve'afit oto. Right, you take fine flour and you bake it. Right, minayin she'afilu chitin. How do you know that you can even take wheat kernels and grind it? You don't have to buy fine flour as it is and then use it. How do you know you can go a step back? In the process, Tamalama velakachta, the Torah says, and you shall take. Right. Nevertheless, Yachal afilu bishar menachos came. Right. Maybe in the other menachos, the other flour offerings, right, you also have to use fine flour. Talmud Lamar ota, no, only that one. Mipnei hachis chon. Now we have no idea what chis chon means, so the Gemara now asks, right? My mipnei hachis chon. Amar Rabbi Elazar Torah chasa al mamonan shel Yisrael. Right, meaning you don't always have to use fine flour, because fine flour is more expensive than regular flour. So every time you bring a korban, every time you have a mincha, every time you have to whatever, you don't have to, because Hashem wants to be good to us. Now, what's the proof text? Dirsiv hishkita et ha'eda ve'et bi'iram. Right, with that we end that parak in Menachos. Right, then this is the right Numbers 20 is the famous story with the hitting of the rock. Right, Moshe Rabbeinu's something sin with regard to drawing water from that rock. It says that you take water to drink from the well, not only or the rock. Not only did it give water to the rock, but it even gave water to their flock. Right, which from there, the Torah sees that HaKadosh Baruch Hu cares about our money. How do we see it from there? How does that prove it? Right.
The water.
Taken care of.
Would have taken care of it without the water. Now, fascinatingly, what's the difference between those two sources? I'm interested more in the sources than the particular examples the Gemara gives. Right, one is you get saras in your house, you get to remove the earthenware stuff out of the house so that it doesn't get ruined and you can't purify it. That's number one. Number two is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to make sure that we have animals, that we have parnasa, that we can get milk from the animals, we can get flesh from the animals. Eat the flesh from the animals. That's God intended. Right?
Hey.
I think God intended that. You might not agree, but I think that's true. Right? So what's the difference between those two sources?
Well, one, you're kind of bending the rule to make something not tame,
Right. Okay. I'll take that's one. Right. So
and the other one is just really just
Hashem's taking care of us.
taking care of us. Yeah?
Right. Okay. So Jeff, this is Jeff Moskowitz, who you can't see either. Right. Jeff says that in one case, the second case, which proves Hashem wants to help take care of us. The first case with the tzaras is almost in a sense Hashem going out of his way more to kind of, Hashem is using his Gemara thumb on the body he doesn't have. Right, but Hashem is using his Gemara thumb to allow us, even the sinner, to kind of skirt the rule that should have ruined my vessels and get me out. Now, which one, by the way, is that's one distinction. Another one. I think of at least two others.
we said before, one is someone who's a sinner, and the other is we're being makriv karbanos. So we're doing
Right, but
something.
if we look at the source, I'll take the distinction as well, right? The people who need the water are just people who need water, right? So Barry Wolf, I don't know if everyone here heard, right? So Barry says there's a difference between regular people getting what they need and the sinner who's getting some kind of preferential treatment. The scope, I think, also is what are we trying to save in, and this is what the Mishnah really pointed out. What are we trying to save in the Tzaras case? Belongings, but which kind? Let's go into your kitchen for a moment in your head and think about. Let's assume they had no bone china. There was no porcelain. There was no bone. So scratch all that out, because I know in our kitchens we think, oh my God, the bone china, it's all over, it's bad, right? But let's say you had metal and you had some glass, and then you had earthenware, right? Earthenware, you can go to the dollar store, and you get cheap garbage. I guess you can get that with glass too, but regular earthenware before it became fancy, La Crusette, whatever, all the fancy schnacks. Is it with porcelain coating?
Oh, maybe, whatever, but yes,
Right.
clay vessels are
Cheap.
a dime a dozen.
Right,
But,
those are the cheap stuff, right? So one is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu cares even about the nothing. The other is, right, without cattle, we're in trouble. We have no food, right? In a sense,
no food, no sacrifices either.
right. We're missing sacrifices, we're missing food, we're missing a lot. I mean, it seems like those are much more critical. In which case, which do you think is the primary source? Which source would you like to latch onto? I like the first one, no? Because what does it show? It's not just that Hashem cares in general, we should have what to live. Okay, that I'm not so like, oh, my God cares, I should live a little bit. Like that's okay, but right. But meaning Hashem cares even about small, minute amounts of money, even for the sinners. That's how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu cares about us. To me, I think that's a more meaningful source. I think a God who wipes out our livelihood, I don't know, like that's not so great. Like I'm not sure that's like the most fabulous thing about Hashem. Whoa, he let us have the cattle. We're following him in the desert. We're dead without him. In the sacrifice, we have no milk, we have no meat. God, not that taking water out of a rock is not a big miracle for us. But like, what was the alternative? The first source is right. It means that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chasa al Mammon She Yisrael is either just he helps us get by, which is great, or he really cares about every little piece, everything for everybody, regardless of who you are. And that, to me, I think is a more meaningful source.
And he's also allowing some trickery there, in that even he's telling you in advance, get your valuables out, just in case.
Right? He's allowing us, for the sinner, to bend the rules to get the small things out. Right? That, I think, is, and the Turei Even that we won't read inside, but with Ginsburg, on the third page, but this is primarily, nobody has this stuff translated. Right, he wants to know why you need a second source, and he essentially enumerates all the reasons that we just said. Right, that the tzara'as case is a chiddush. Right, that's not so simple. We could easily have said, okay, you're a sinner. This is your punishment. Your house gets tzara'as. The stuff inside gets wiped out. That's part of getting tzara'as. Right, tough luck. But that's part of the punishment. He thinks that that source is a much more mechudesh. It's a much more novel source because of all of that is included. Rav Asher Weiss has one more distinction, which is also, I think, very important. It also shines light on the tzara'as case. One is communal, right? The other is private, right? Meaning, don't just say, Okay, yeah, so all the people in the desert, if Hashem does not bring water out of that rock for all of us, so we're all dead. The whole Jewish people. So you want to tell me Hashem's going to do a miracle for Jewish people? Fabulous. But what about the one, the individual? Does Hashem care about that individual, the sinning individual? And the answer is yes. That's why we have that second source. And most people, that's why, meaning, right? Why does Rashi quote that source? Because he likes it better. I mean, for all the reasons, not that he likes it better, but because that's the more powerful source. I mean, that's the source that really shows that Hashem cares. Now, Rabbi Dessler wants to know what's the takeaway for us? Right, so that's an interesting question. Is it just to know that Hashem cares? Maybe that might be sufficient.
Maybe
Yeah.
that you don't have to be taking your time worrying about these mundane things where you should be concentrating on listening to Hashem and doing what Hashem wants.
Okay, so I'll buy that. Right, Lori says that right, if Hashem is going to take care of those small things, we shouldn't fret it, and that'll give us time to worry about things that are more important. And that certainly is one takeaway. He flips it a little bit differently, right, and argues as follows. I think this is a second nice message. Okay, there could be a lot of nice messages coming from one rule. We can accept them all. Right, Rabbi Dessler says that if Hashem cares so much about our small valuables, then we better make sure that we use them properly, right? It's not a meaningless item. That's how so I smashed a cup. Oh, who cares? It's just a little bit of money, right? And he says it's not just a little bit. Yes, Sid.
We saw that with Yaakov Avinu when he went back.
Yes, that is the famous medrash, right? Sid, the Pachim Ktanim, right, Sid?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yes, it's the connection a little bit choppy, but Sid Goldschmidt points out that again, that, by the way, that medrash requires a whole shir in and of itself. That's a fascinating medrash, but we're going to just keep the aspect that Sid mentions because it is very relevant here. That Yaakov Avinu, when he goes over and then he goes back over the river, and he ends up fighting with the angel of Esav, and it gets the limp, and then we can't have the Gedanasha. Now we can't have a whole lamb. What a terrible story.
Yeah.
I'm off track.
It's all about me.
That's all about me. I'm off track. I'm no, right? But in that story, the Medrash says that he went back for Pachim Ktanim or Pachim Ktanim, depending on how you want to pronounce it, but on small jugs to remind us that right, every item, every dollar, everything we have is valuable, should not be taken for granted. I can't contain myself, so I'll throw out one question for consideration on that medrash, which has always bothered me, and I actually think I spoke about it once, but I can't remember. So if somebody reminds me, I'll look it up and send you the drasha. As important as Pachim Ktanim are, does it really justify leaving your family when there's an attack coming from an invading army? That's a fascinating question. But now we're beyond the scope of beyond the scope. Okay, right. It's a Sid. It's a great medrash, Sid, and certainly, right. That is the medrash. One of the points of that medrash absolutely is that we have to appreciate everything we have, and we don't just say, "Nah, it's garbage. Let it go. It's okay." Right. So it could be that Lori is right, and we don't fret. We should worry about right. Let Hashem take care of our small things, and we can worry about the more important things by either one of those answers. Okay, I want to just end, and maybe it's an outgrowth of this, of Rav Dessler's point. There's two sources at the bottom of page 3, which I think are fundamentally different. They're very short, so because they're short, I'll read them and translate. I don't want to read the long paragraphs if I don't have an English translation, because that's not nice, but these are very short. Okay, certainly there's a Tosefta in Shavuos. I'm not so smart. I can't remember where I found this, but I found a source who gave me the Tosefta. Nobody should think I'm so smart. All right, the Tosefta is, again, Tanaitic material from the Mishnah. I didn't make it into the Mishnah, so they put it together in a book called the Tosefta. The Tosefta in Shavuos says, "Ru'uyin hayu Yisrael lahakriv korban hashem b'chol esav b'chol sha'ah." Right, Jews should have just been bringing sacrifices all the time and every hour. Ela shachas hakadosh baruch hu al mamonon shel Yisrael. That Hashem, right, was concerned for the money of Israel. Okay, let me read you one more, and then we'll take a gander and try and figure out what this means. Right, this is the Sifrei, right, the Medrash in Re'eh, to Parshas Re'eh. Pesach v'Chag HaSukkos she'enan onas melacha, right? Pesach and Sukkos, that it's not a time for work, right? Asa zeh shiva v'zeh shmona. So the Torah made Pesach 7 days and Sukkos with Shmini Atzeres 8 days, because it's not really the time for real work. Then you can take off, you can relax and knock yourself out. Atzeres, which is Shavuos, shehi onas, shelo yuvat lumim lachtam. That's a time. Whatever you're supposed to be doing in the field, you really got to be doing it. Eina ela yom echad. It's only one day. Melamed shechasach hakadosh baruch hu al mamonon shel Yisrael. Right. So here, hakasuv. Sorry, I keep saying. Right. Melamed shechasach hakasuv or haTorah al mamonon shel Yisrael. And Hashem cares about our money. Now, this is fundamentally different. This is not Hashem. Well, let me ask you, how is this different? What do those sources say to you? Right, what do you think?
Well, the holidays were established such that we would still be able to do all our work. We wouldn't
Right.
take too much time off.
Meaning that certainly the Sifrei, and I think I could read the Tosefta that way, it has nothing to do with Hashem taking care of our money. It's Hashem wanting to make sure that we can go to work, because that's valuable. Right? That's a fundamentally different idea in that the Torah cares about money, meaning the Torah mandates that we don't work on Pesach and Sukkot, but those are not real work times. Shavuos, which is a real work time, is one day. Why? Because God does not want us to miss the days of work. But that implies that we're going to work, right? And we're going to make our money then. That's a very, very, very different use of this concept. I don't believe it's the primary, but I kind of like it, so I figured I would throw it in. I think it might also be, right, there's two ways to read the Tosefta, and then I'll take questions and we'll end. It could be that it is the sacrifices that cost money, so we should be bringing korbanos all the time, but they're very expensive. Or no, if you were bringing korbanos all the time, what would you not be doing? Going to work, right? So read the Tosefta either way, but clearly the Sifrei is using this, that Hashem cares about our money, meaning Hashem wants us to make money, right? Honestly and faithfully and use it well, but that we Jews go to work and are self-supportive and make money is a fascinating use of this concept. But again, I think very different than its original source, right? In its original source, it has Hashem taking care of us, right? With all the permutations, this is Hashem allowing us to take care of ourselves. With that, I will take any questions.
When you first introduced the topic, my first thought was, if Hashem cares about our cash, why is Jewish life so expensive?
Why is Jewish life so
I
expensive?
mean, this is perhaps the Tosefta that sacrifices all the time, because you got to pay tuition, you got to get good food, and you got to do this, and you got to do that.
So I think Jewish life is so expensive is partially man-made and partially, I don't know that it was intended to be that way. I'm not sure. Listen, kosher meat does not have to cost what the local butchers charge. That I promise you. I once walked in and I never buy lamb chops because my boys eat too much and I can't buy them any lamb chops. Just I'm not spending $600 on lamb chops for Friday night dinner. It's just not it's not my head. I can't do it. So I said to the guy from behind the counter, I said, well, what about the poor people in Deal? He looks at me and goes, there's no poor people in Deal. I said, not that shop here.
Right.
Anyways, but that is a fair question, but that also for another time. All right, anybody else? All right, then we wish you a good night. Again, next week, the Shir is still in formation, but a few different angles of blowing a shofar in echo chambers and some surprising conclusions from that. So hopefully we'll all be together next Tuesday night. Wishing everyone a wonderful evening.
Take care. Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
Thank you.